Here to discuss it with us, Congressman Adam Schiff, Democrat from California, who has endorsed Hillary Clinton. Congressman, thanks so much for being here in studio.
Great to be with you.
Bernie Sanders says Hillary Clinton is not qualified to be president. What's your response?
That's a pretty extraordinary claim. She's probably among the very best qualified candidates to run for this office. She was just an extraordinary Secretary of State. She has broad experience. I think she'll make a tremendous commander-in-chief. I don't think people take that very seriously.
He says it's because of her record on things like her vote for the Iraq War, on her ties to Wall Street, on her trade deals. Let me play for you the reasons why he says she's not qualified.
I don't think that you are qualified if you get $15 million from Wall Street through your super PAC. I don't think you are qualified if you have voted for the disastrous war in Iraq. I don't think you are qualified if you have supported virtually every disastrous trade agreement which has cost us millions of decent-paying jobs.
The crowd seems to agree with him.
Well, that's his crowd of supporters, but I don't think the issue is qualification. You know, certainly appropriate for Senator Sanders to raise any particular vote or substantive issues, but I think it's an extraordinary exaggeration to say that those are disqualifying characteristics. Frankly, I'm much more concerned this week with what I heard Senator Sanders say on the gun issue. I've been carrying for the last 3 years the legislation to repeal the unique immunity the gun industry enjoys, and to hear him so flatly say that he would reject the ability to be able to sue gun makers after saying he would co-sponsor the bill I've introduced was quite astounding. But it is consistent with the vote that he took early on to support the NRA's top priority. That, I think, is a more substantive issue to be discussed.
Let's talk about that, but let's do it with one allowance. Senator Sanders was responsible for being told that the Clinton campaign said he was unqualified. That's why he's holding qualified in quotes. He's taking what they said about him and then returning it on the merits of what he said. I just don't think he deserves that much of a black eye for raising this. Fair point?
Well, I'm not sure that the Clinton campaign ever said that. I think that
but that's
Secretary
what
Clinton...
he says. He says they're saying that I'm not qualified. Well, I don't think Secretary Clinton is qualified, and that's where that came from. It wasn't like he just initiated this. Fair point.
Well, it would be fair, I guess, if the Clinton campaign was making that claim about Senator Sanders. I'm not sure that's correct. But either way, frankly, I don't think this is the issue that the candidates ought to be debating, whether they're qualified. I think rather ought to be what are their positions and issues.
The gun one is a real one. Why make the case? Why should a gun manufacturer be held liable if its product is used illegally? The analogy that they use, people who support Sanders saying this seems unfair, is I buy a car, I use it to run into somebody. You don't get to sue Ford. You sue me. You sue maybe somebody who was involved with me who shouldn't have let me drive, but not Ford.
Well, except for the fact that if you're selling cars and you sell a car to a 16-year-old and you're quite clear that the person is not an eligible driver and you let them take the car off the lot, there's no reason you should be immunized from that kind of negligent behavior any more than a liquor store owner selling to minors. Why should a gun dealer selling to someone that they have good reason to believe is a straw purchaser? They're not buying 15 of the same gun for themselves.
Senator Sanders has said in the past, if you provide facts that show that the gun seller, the manufacturer, which is not always the same thing, by the way, which also has to be taken into consideration, if the manufacturer knew that its product was being sold to someone that's not supposed to have it, that's different. He said that, but that's also a very specific fact pattern.
Then again, yesterday he said that he didn't think people should have that right, the Sandhook victims, to even get into court. And the problem is, you can't make those negligence cases. You can't prove your case if you're barred from the courthouse. And right now, so many of these cases are just barred from ever getting a hearing before a judge. That isn't right. Why does this industry have this unique liability? Why doesn't any other industry have it? Frankly, none of them need it. The good actors in the industry don't need it. The bad actors don't deserve it. And so we ought to repeal it. And I find it bewildering, honestly, for him to say a couple months ago when we reintroduced the bill, I've been carrying for 3 years, that he would co-sponsor it, and then the other day when he was asked about it, say, no, he doesn't think people ought to have that right. It's very confusing, and I think it's got to be very hurtful to the Sandhook victims to have one of the leading presidential candidates basically say they shouldn't have their day in court.
Let's talk about what's happening here in New York. Things are getting feisty. At the moment, in terms of the polls, Hillary Clinton has a comfortable lead. about 12 points in the latest Quinnipiac poll ahead of Bernie Sanders. But if that lead narrows, or if somehow she loses New York, this would be a major tide turner. Her adopted home state got close.
Look, she ought to win New York, and I think she will win New York. But this kind of presidential year, this kind of race, you can't take anything for granted. And obviously, the kind of, and strange to talk about somebody who's been in the Senate as long as Senator Sanders as an outsider, but this year the outsiders, the message candidates have a great appeal, and so you can't take anything for granted. I think she is very well loved in New York and did a great job as the senator from New York. So
you have no concern. You have no anxiety that she won't win New York.
You know, look, I'm confident she'll win New York, but frankly, this kind of election year, I'm not comfortable, counting anything in advance. If someone had told me that we would be at this stage of the campaign, the beginning of this cycle where you would have as the front runner on the GOP side and Ted Cruz as the number two, I would have never believed it. And I think if you'd asked anyone in the Senate whether Bernie Sanders would get a cult-like following among young people, no one would have expected that either.
Senator Sanders a year or so ago, he would have bet against it as well. But times have changed. Do you think win is a defined term here for Hillary Clinton in New York? Do you think she has to win by at least 10 for this to be seen as a mandate victory?
I don't know, what the margin would need to be. Frankly, I think that she is well on track for the nomination. I think she will be. She is before New York. I think she will be after New York. I think it's in the Clinton campaign's interest to, frankly, keep the race with Senator Sanders on a calm, even footing, not let it descend into hyperbole. I don't think she needs to go there. So if I were counseling the campaign, I'd say, do what they're doing, keep it focused on issues. Don't take the bait from the Sanders campaign. Don't let it get messy because, I think they're very much on track.
Congressman Adam Schiff, thanks so much for being here.
You bet. Thank you.